Can you please step aside and wait near the pillar? This will take just a moment. The young flight attendant angled her clipboard away, chin tucked in a practiced gesture. Conversation stuttered to a stop across gate 148, the terminal's white acoustic tile swallowing every other human sound except her voice. Wheelchairs clinked by on her left. The east-facing windows bled lavender into black, pre-dawn at Tom Bradley, shadows long and clean. A man in a business suit peered up from his novel, eyes narrowing from over the rim of his glasses. The woman being addressed didn't blink. She folded her copy of Poetry magazine, her cover, an inky print of a fig tree, and set it on her carry-on, one finger holding her reading glasses by the bridge. Her scarf slipped at the collar, print faded by 1,000 academic conferences, the fabric folded with military precision. Beside her, a battered leather folio peeked from her tote, stacked thick with a blue notebook and a thin hospital envelope. "Ma'am, we have to verify your seat assignment for 2A, the attendant repeated, voice higher now, brisk, wrist-flicking hair from her face in a move almost unconscious. Her name badge, S. Tors, below it, a satin pin reading Onboarding Mentor. The poet, her hair clipped back with a barrette silver at the roots, tilted her chin. "Everything's in order. If you need my ticket again, it's right here." She offered the boarding pass without standing, eyes level, voice a low, metered cadence. Tors pursed her lips. She held the pass but didn't actually look at it. "We've had some, system flags with business class upgrades this morning. Would you mind stepping aside?" There was a tightness to her mouth, like she was biting off the end of every phrase. A man in the next row shifted, lips tight. Another agent hovered by the counter, retying a ponytail, careful not to look up. The gentle blue of the notifications bar on the poet's phone flashed. She tapped the screen, something urgent, but the contents remained hidden. "The pillar S over there, ma'am." Rain pinged faintly at the glass. The next boarding announcement threatened to cut through the tension but stalled. She didn't move. Eyes fixed to the check-in display, the poet breathed in once, ribcage rising slow and deliberate. Then, she snapped her magazine closed and stood. This wasn't going to be quick. Every operation has a timing window, and not every window will wait for you. They didn't know what she was up against, but the countdown had begun. Two children leaped over the threshold of the gate, their laughter the briefest reprieve in a field of wary stares. The poet, known to half the English departments on either seaboard but to almost no one here, let go of the magazine, tucking it into her navy tote. Years ago, she'd been the first black laureate in her home state, a professor emerita before 60, awarded the Pulitzer for her collection written during a different war. Tonight, anonymity barely shielded her. Half a generation younger than anyone else in the senior lines and decades older, sharper too, than the millennial check-in agent barking into his earpiece. Tors dropped her voice. "We just need to confirm everything is, standard. Upgrades don't always process right. Do you have anything else? Another form of ID? Credit card?" Her lilted at the edges, a tick, practiced for sounding friendly but designed to disarm. The poet didn't flinch. She rechecked her phone, an unopened thread, time-stamped 5 minutes ago, sat under her husband's portrait. There, just for a moment, the notification faded into the background of a physician's schedule. Flashbacks stalked her periphery, a judge's gavel landing too fast, a committee vote cast in secret, her office door shut a little harder that day last May. Now she was nobody, at least that's what they'd hoped. Her smile flickered when a woman at the adjoining gate, shuffling Airline-branded pamphlets, glanced over with a face that suggested she saw everything and would say nothing. At 5:21 a.m., the first real escalation came. Tors drew the jet bridge door shut behind her, propped against the wall just inside boarding. "Can I get all available crew to the counter? And, security." Her radio flashed blue. A journalist, a woman of determined posture and plaid scarf, her badge reading Harmon HS Advisor, lifted her phone hesitantly. She hesitated only a heartbeat before turning the camera on, voice low to her shoulder. "Just documenting for clarity." Livestream open under a string of emojis, 10 viewers. Tors squared her shoulders. "We also need to check the payment type that was used to book this ticket. Sometimes there's confusion with card authorizations from certain agencies." The poet, voice even, my agency's listed right on the receipt, it's all public record. A woman in a navy hoodie behind the velvet rope raised her voice. You just checked the last 3 people with a glance. What's the holdup for her? She gestured with her water bottle, eyebrows arched so high they practically punctuated the question. Tor's lips pursed. Thank you for your patience, we're just following protocol. A man in a baseball cap, seat 3C, looked up, mouth opening for a protest, then snapping shut again. The journalist's camera caught every word, viewer count 35. Tor's cleared her throat, activating the public intercom. Her words fired over the PA, bright and sharp, ricocheting. Could the passenger in seat 2A please approach the counter and present documentation? Repeat, 2A to the counter. No place to hide now. Pressure mounted with the click of every sliding door. The poet's hands, precise and nearly still, clutched her folio tighter. She looked one more time at her phone, one message bolded, urgent. A glance at her calendar grid, the hour blocks tight together, something critical looming. Still she stepped forward. She doesn't have to, came the voice from the woman in the navy hoodie, louder now. One of the nearby gate agents exchanged a worried glance with Tor's but stayed silent. Tor's squared up. Ma'am, you're holding up boarding. For what exactly? The poet asked soft. 5 seconds, the air between them flexed. Because this is how we do it. We check when something's not quite lined up, Tor's said. You must understand. Not quite lined up, there it was. The poet stood her ground, shifting her stance. I'm not moving until you tell me why. Tor's faltered, glanced at her screen as if expecting backup from the pixels. The journalist's live count ticked to 84. The first comment bleeped by, record everything. The woman in the navy hoodie muttered, always some excuse. This time, Tor's mouth twisted, neck stiffening. If you're unwilling to comply, we'll have to involve security. Security, one word, cold as steel. But the poet only placed her reading glasses in her jacket pocket and watched the streaming phone, her reflection framed by airport fluorescence. 2 minutes and everything changed. There are days endurance and compliance have different meanings. Hers had just diverged at the jet bridge. Time didn't just march, it threatened. Calendar events blinked neon in the background of her mind. An alarm chimed, halfway muffled by the slap of a suitcase handle onto faux marble tile. Her thumb hovered over her phone, wedding band catching overhead LEDs. The flight still showed on time. The boarding clock counted down from 32 minutes, but in the matrix of her day, the tension only grew. Another message now, calendar updated. Red block 6 hours from now, unmovable, impossible to ignore, and yet to leave was to forfeit. For a moment, a rare human moment, she considered moving. Hand tensed, slipped inside the tote, gripped the base of her folio as if to lift it. A slow exhale, jaw set not quite at rest. Flashes, her hospital contact, clinical blue, unread. Overlaid a memory, folding a letter after the last university meeting, a line reading effective immediately. The stain of their betrayal lingered, but here, in this clinical environment, it became a shield. A young boy by the window, book in his lap, looked her way. His hair curled against his forehead, eyes big and watchful. For all the posturing adults, it was his silent, unfiltered gaze that landed. For a breath she'd carried through riots and readings, she realized walking now would leave that child and others watching again as dignity was traded for haste. She made up her mind by sitting again, bag at her feet, lap open. She set her phone face up, screen dark, hands steady, and watched Tor's posture, not a challenge but an invitation. Let's see what happens next. Tor's misread the comm instantly. Thank you for your cooperation, she said to no one in particular, loud, relieved like a verdict. She turned to fetch security. The poet sat unmoved. Resolve didn't always have to thunder. Sometimes it looped back, silent and immovable. Ladies and gentlemen, boarding will commence in 22 minutes, a clipped intercom voice pronounced, every syllable wrapped in tight, metallic certainty. Please ensure you have proper documentation visible. The boarding clock glowed a bloody orange. Ground crew shuffled overhead bins, upselling seat upgrades with tight nods. Tours pointedly ignored the backstop of an actual boarding pass, pursuing instead the shadow of a misalignment, her word for it anyway. At the center of it all, the hospital envelope in the poet's tote shifted. Light caught on the name, just enough for the journalism teacher's stream to zoom, the autofocus searching for context. Viewer count 250, then 700. Comments climbed past the last scroll. 2A incident trended, hashtags filling up faster than airport Wi-Fi. A faint ping reminder for a call, the open laptop queued to a legal document with red lines, someone's initials. A tomorrow folded in a static rectangle, 6:50 a.m. Surgery. Senior crew now pressed in near the boarding door. The captain in full uniform, authoritative but not yet adversarial, moved with deliberate, even steps. He saw Tor's signal, her eyes skating over the poet and landing on his brass nameplate. "Can I get a briefing, please?" His voice was quiet, imperious. He did not look at the journalist's phone but knew it was there. Tor's responded, "Just a matter of seat assignment, possible unauthorized upgrade. Nothing major, we're just making sure it's all verified." The poet, voice flat, held out her boarding pass again. "Everything matches. I was reissued at the check-in desk." The captain nodded, scanning the ticket, cross-referencing against his own device. "Ma'am, is there any reason your credentials might not match our records?" She did not return the challenge. "Is your policy to single out passengers at the gate or only those in certain seats?" A tiny muscle tightened near the captain's temple. He sensed the trap but wasn't yet ready to spring it. "Ma'am, I'm just trying to resolve this quickly. It seems out of the ordinary." He peered at the manifest, brows knitting, gaze flicking between the poet and Tors. Tors chimed in, faster now. "This isn't the first time we've had someone try this procedure. Some people buy tickets from third parties. Just last week there was a problem." The poet's reply cut clean. "Maybe check your logs from 8:40 yesterday. I upgraded at the official desk with a supervisor present." The captain paused. He knew enough. An assertion delivered with that level of detail wasn't standard. That and her composure, it wasn't the first time she stood before a committee. He raised a brow. "We'll look into it right away, ma'am." He glanced once more at Tors, whose face darkened a shade. "You'll want to process that quickly, please. We're on an international schedule." Tors, suddenly tight-lipped, wrestled with her tablet. The whole row held its breath. Silence had heft. It weighed down every conversation in a 10-yard radius. While Tors dialed dispatch on her headset, shoulders squared, earpiece jammed in place, the captain keyed in a code, back straightening with every word exchanged. He spoke low, but not low enough that the phone's microphone missed the cadence of something urgent. "This is Captain Reed, Flight 241, running into a ticket verification flagged by onboard. Yes, a business class customer. No, the name on the seat assignment matches. I'm holding for manual override. No officer present. No, there's a camera running." His lips compressed. He glanced at the poet, eyes flicking to her name on the manifest, linger, recognition, hesitation. He nodded once, almost imperceptibly, to himself. "Next call higher up the chain now." "Yes, confirming, poet Laureate, correct, and her agency is, yes, that's all here." His spine stiffened. A single bead of sweat rolled down Tor's neck. She pinched at her badge, thumb running circles over the enamel. For a moment, her confidence faltered, a second where her eyes darted too long at the dark screen of her device, unable to find a script. From her tote, the blue legal notebook slid halfway out. The journalist's live feed zoomed in as the page fluttered, the bold-headed subject line visible for a second. "Affirmative class action, $4 to be." 4 more news outlets pinged the livestream. Viewer count 3,000 and climbing. The poet, unmoving, tucked her glasses neatly between her fingers, a silent semaphore for patience measured in decades, not minutes. No one breathed. "There is to be no disturbance," Captain Reed said softly, shielding his screen from Tors. He keyed a new code, words shorter, every syllable clipped, each line ending hard. I need general counsel on the line, now. He met Tor's eyes. We have a passenger with sensitive credentials and an urgent schedule. I believe our policy allows discretion in this case, yes. Tors fumbled at the collar, voice barely audible. Policy says exceptions for priority passengers, but not in this case, sir. Someone in the bystander clump, a woman with white nails and a nervous cough, turned to stare at her phone, unable to meet anyone's gaze. Another overseas agent stared at the ground. Reed's phone vibrated, a text lit up. Do not move her, DOJ watching, trial Monday, urgent. His hand trembled. Even for him, stakes had escalated. Tor's posture collapsed, chin tipping downward, grip looser on her clipboard. The poet took it in, eyes unwavering. She didn't move, didn't speak, just smoothed the hospital envelope with one hand. For a moment, nobody made a sound. For a moment, the airport's clock seemed to freeze. For a moment, her presence filled the room, muscle memory for line after line of resistance. When the phone in Reed's hand lit up next, it vibrated a quiet thunder, a text message from the CEO's office. Passenger in 2A is lead counsel Monday, $4, 2B, DOJ press board all notified, do not detain, escort if needed. He blanched, then recentered himself in front of Tors, announcing just loud enough. We are privileged to have with us Dr. Geneva Porter, lead counsel on the current class action. Seat 2A is hers by court order, direct from settlement negotiation. Somewhere a child gasped, tablets dropped. A man in row 4 shut his laptop, lips pressed thin. Bystanders, now suddenly allies by silence, shifted in their seats. One lowered his head, thumbs pressing his phone until the screen winked black. Another quickly archived her own video, quietly ashamed of every pixel. Tor's knees nearly buckled. Her hand shot out for the counter's edge, nails whitening. For a breath, she didn't blink, her entire body rigid as if hoping still to be rescued by routine. The clipboard slipped, the plastic hitting tile. Geneva Porter, whose name had not been spoken aloud for 12 weeks, who had sat through hush-hush firings and learned the price of anonymity, spoke only once, tone so soft the microphone barely caught it. Is there anything else you need from me? 6 words severing the whole tableau. Not a soul responded. Thank you for your time, the captain murmured, straightening. For the first time, he looked to her not as a problem, but as the axis the whole crew now rotated around. She picked up her folio. The gate opened before her. The aisle, once an obstacle course of eyes and opinions, now parted with the ease of water. Conversations died mid-sentence. Heavy with the sharp, sterilized fragrance of recirculated air and the faint jangle of duty-free bottles, she strode slow and deliberate down the narrow corridor. As she passed, the man from row 4 made himself smaller in his seat, one hand covering the lower half of his face. The navy hoodie woman mouthed, "Thank you," almost too faint to catch. A woman on the window edge pretended to scroll, phone face down, knuckles white. Someone's apology, whispered, barely reached her. Tors, now nearly transparent, stood behind the curtain. Her face was gaunt, voice brittle. "If you just told me." Dr. Porter's words were low, slicing air. It was your job to ask, not to assume. No answer, only the terminal's echo. Harmon, the journalism teacher, live-streamed her whole progress, comments streaming faster than the eye could process. Justice for 2A, this changes everything, never flying this airline again. At the crew galley, Tors slid quietly into a jump seat. 2 senior flight attendants passed her, their faces stony, gaze flicking uneasily between her and the boarding passengers. A reprimand too public to hide, too late to matter. Dr. Porter exited the jet, walking tall. She crossed the jet bridge, shoulders squared, wrist flicking her phone so the last notification vanished. At the terminal threshold, a man in a navy suit stepped forward, hand outstretched. Miss Porter, Dr. Porter, please accept our apologies, the incident. She held up a hand, her tone still steady as a metronome. No incident should ever go unnoticed, not anymore. The man hesitated, then nodded once, face drawn. Outside, a town car idled at the curb, driver waiting. She settled in the back, shutting the door with a blurred thunk. Her phone lit up. The operating room coordinator's message blinking confirmed, 6 hours out, team ready. A quick call, her voice this time softer. All is still on track, no delays. On the other end, light laughter. We're matching your precision, Dr. Porter. Arrive as scheduled. We watched your video. Geneva's eyes closed, heartbeat even. Thank you, let's focus on the work. Her car melted into the wave of traffic. The world for a moment reoriented. In the boardroom 48 hours later, tension ran higher than quarterly losses. The CEO, features pinched, leaned on the high-gloss table. Gentlemen, this is non-negotiable. We lost $210 million in market cap overnight, 13% drop. The documentary is viral in 3 languages. Our insurer wants a settlement figure on Dr. Porter's case, estimate, $4.2 billion all in. General counsel clicked her pen, voice clipped. We're enforcing mandatory real-time anti-bias training effective immediately. All new policies roll out to 13,000 crew members. No more public documentation calls. All gate staff retrained. Fail to comply, you're out. The chief customer officer hinted, hashtag crossed 2 million by Wednesday, boycotts now global. One executive swallowed, will issue a public apology and terminate tours today. GC not just tours, half her onboarding class, root and branch. There were no dissenters. On the morning news, anchor straight-backed in red blazer, camera glued to her face. Airline officials have admitted liability after a viral incident involving a civil rights attorney, and poet Laureate was viewed by over 9.8 million people worldwide. The company's stock fell to a 3-year low. Experts say industry-wide changes are likely. Behind her, the 2A incident trended across all screens. At Cedars, precisely on time, Dr. Porter strode through the surgical unit's glass doors. Hospital staff parted without ceremony. She set her tote beside the chart. An attending nurse, voice tentative, said, "We watched your interview last night. Thank you for what you did." Geneva paused, smiling briefly. "We have a job to do, that comes first." A colleague by the scrub sink murmured, awe coloring his words, "I can't believe you still made it after all that." On time as planned, she wasn't late by a second. Within 90 days, industry policy shifted. 40,000 staff at 8 major carriers saw their onboarding overhauled. Lawsuits proliferated, 4, then 12, then 19 filed in cities coast to coast. The settlement, $4.2 billion, historic for its class. Viewership of the original documentary spiked, crossing 15 million by autumn. Equity training numbers quadrupled, the scale finally matching the size of the indignity. Something new had taken hold, a system that stretched and bent now snapped back, held to account in daylight. 6 months later, seat 2A on a different flight, a different route, crew moved down the aisle with quiet efficiency. Geneva handed her boarding pass to a young attendant who simply scanned, smiled, and said, "Welcome aboard, Dr. Porter." Geneva smiled, "Thank you, just glad to be here." The attendant returned her gaze, respect without hesitation. Some tides turn with protocol, others with witnesses. Sometimes systems crumble at the touch of a single, steady presence, sometimes by the hand that refuses to yield. Across assumptions, the smallest question rattles the most ironclad gate. For every passive silence, a new voice rises, becoming its own law. You do not win by waiting, you win by staying put. If you were moved by Geneva's story, remember, every voice shared writes another line of accountability. Hit subscribe to hear more stories where dignity bends the arc of power, and share this video so the next witness doesn't hesitate. Tonight, every boarding pass weighs different, and every silence is just one breath from a reckoning. The lights in the cabin dimmed for takeoff, and Geneva's breath, soft but measured, rose in sync with the fuselage as the plane shuddered from the tarmac. She felt, for the first time in months, the simple reassurance of motion chosen, not dictated. Hands folded over her notebook, she gazed ahead as more passengers settled, overhead bins thumping closed, shoes scraping carpet. There was no ceremony in this boarding, just purpose disguised as routine. Still, for Geneva, the choreography of every smile, every scanned pass held a sharpened edge. Eyes flickered up and down the aisle, sometimes lingering a second too long on her. Small, almost apologetic nods came from the crew, gratitude and regret tangled in every gesture. Shortly after takeoff, the young attendant Rhea, her badge reed, thin gold looped through each ear, paused at Geneva's row. "Dr. Porter, can I get you anything? Tea, water." Her tone was gentle, but her gaze did not shy away. "Tea would be perfect, thank you." Geneva offered a smile that suggested the warmth of old church pews, not cross-examination or protest. As Rhea headed down the aisle, a man 2 seats back leaned forward, voice low. "Dr. Porter, I saw the news cycle. Just wanted to say thank you. My wife's an attorney too, watched the documentary together." Geneva inclined her head, humility and humor playing in her eyes. "Give her my best, and tell her to keep her boarding pass ready." A ripple of laughter, modest but genuine, ran between them. An older woman across the aisle, whose hair was a wild silver cloud, smiled. "I switched airlines because of what you did," she confided. Geneva's throat caught for half a heartbeat. "I suppose justice travels fast these days." The plane settled into a cruising altitude. The view out 2A's window was already a field of golden backlit clouds, the sort of spectacle poets write epics for and rarely get to witness in person. She sipped her tea. For the first time, the taste was simple, not soured by anticipation or aftertaste of humiliation. Her phone pulsed with notifications. Harmon, the journalist, had sent a message. "Saw you in the news again. 6 more stories in syndication. Are you ready for the next wave?" Instead of replying, Geneva clicked to another window. Emails from colleagues flooded the screen, congratulations interspersed with cautious queries. Would she return to the academy? Would the lawsuit's resolution allow her to broker reform wider still? A text arrived from her husband. "Surgery went well, all wrapped up. Wish you'd seen the residents, they quoted your poem. You still teaching everywhere you are." She let the phone slip into her lap, eyes closing, breath slowing. The world outside the window sped below at 30 feet, but here, there was a stillness earned only by standing ground. The next hours were a gentle rhythm, trays clinking, whispered thank yous, the distant whine of engines. Yet Geneva could not shake the sense that she was inhabiting a new country, one mapped by every viewer who watched her hold a silent pose at the gate, one named by every woman who'd messaged "Me too" or "Never again." Her mind drifted back to that morning. The press conference at the courthouse was brief and electric. Camera flashes had lit up her navy scarf, the hospital envelope peeking from her tote. Journalists, with less hesitation now, fielded straightforward questions. What now for the system that failed you? How does this settlement change things for others? What do you hope your stand means for the next generation? Geneva had found herself measuring every word. "I hope it means no one's story stays small," she said, "and no one's presence is mistaken for a mistake." After, outside the courthouse, a crowd had waited, not protesters or supporters, just people. Some had handed cards, hastily scribbled gratitude or phone numbers. One young girl, hair in neat braids, thrust forward a notebook to be signed. "I want to write about this someday," she confided, voice trembling. Geneva signed and handed it back. "Write it true," she told her. "Write it so they remember." Her phone buzzed now with a message from the same girl, forwarded through Harmon. "I started my essay. It's called The Gate. I want to be like you when it matters." Geneva's eyes stung fatigue or perhaps something finer. She pressed her hand to the blue notebook, feeling the satisfying heft of paper, the promise of all unfinished lines. A quiet moment followed, broken only when Rhea returned, a plate of fruit balanced expertly on her palm. "Compliments of the captain," she said. Geneva smiled, raising her cup. "You've set a new standard for welcoming passengers." Rhea wiped an imaginary crumb from her cuff. "We've all been watching. You made us see things differently." As the hours unspooled, Geneva drafted a letter on the notepad she carried. Not a legal brief, not a poem for publication, just a note she meant to send to the staff of that first airline, to tours in particular if her address could be found. She wished to say not, "I forgive you, but I hope you learn from this." She wrote, "We all become the gate eventually. Choose carefully whom you open to and how." By the time the captain announced descent, Geneva felt the weight of resolve shift, lighter now without the fuel of anger. Descent, she realized, wasn't a furnace but a seed. It grew, and others watered it, sometimes in rooms you'd never enter yourself. In the arrivals lounge, after the tide of passengers swept past, she found herself face to face with a younger woman, mid-20s, slightly awkward, her ID lanyard hanging from her neck. She fidgeted with a tablet. "Dr. Porter, can I walk with you?" Geneva nodded, shouldering her tote. "Of course." They walked in tandem, the younger woman's heels clicking on tile. "I was at the gate that day," she confessed. "In LA, I just watched. I wanted to help, but I froze." Geneva's step slowed, voice low. "It's easier to do after than during." "I watched the live stream 10 times after my shift. I sent the link to my mom, my friends. I applied for a new posting, internal equity, because of you." "You did help," Geneva said, pausing to meet her gaze fully. "Everyone who bore witness helped rewrite what comes next." The woman's eyes widened, gratitude evident, but also something like relief washing over her features. "I thank you." Geneva shook her hand, warm and dry. "Next time you'll be the one standing up." They parted ways at the escalator. Geneva rode silently down, her reflection fractured by the handrail, each piece bearing a different future, one with more voices, more questions, fewer silences. Outside, a bank of news vans idled. Reporters leaned into microphones, faces framed in LED lamps, each rehearsing the same sequence. Following the historic settlement, Dr. Geneva Porter arrived today. Geneva, opting for privacy, sidestepped their sightlines, nerves honed from years in faculty halls and courtrooms. She found her car quickly. Her driver, a gray-haired man with kind eyes, opened the door. "Good afternoon, Dr. Porter. I saw your speech on the courthouse steps." "I hope it landed where it needed, Charlie," she answered. He tipped his cap as he pulled into traffic. "Ma'am, you've got the ear of half the city. Imagine what's next." Geneva allowed herself to, just for a moment, a future where pre-dawn flights no longer carried hidden costs. A future where status wasn't mistaken for privilege, where boarding passes and bodies didn't warrant extra scrutiny, where a poet's patience was rewarded with respect, not resistance. Around the country, echoes of her morning at Gate 148 played out in ripple and chorus. Not perfectly, but persistently. In an airline breakroom in Dallas, a supervisor replayed the video for his team. "See how she didn't raise her voice? That's power. Don't let it put you to sleep. Notice who steps up for her, the teacher, the woman in the hoodie. This isn't a training module. This is why we change how we do things." A flight attendant, new on the job, watched and asked, "Why didn't anyone help sooner?" The supervisor looked around the circle. "We're not paid to question the system until we are. Now we are." He assigned reading, not the incident report, but Geneva Porter's poetry, a slim volume passed down the line. "Understand the breath between her words," he said. "That's what protocol can't teach." Back at Cedars, Geneva slipped again into her white coat, her hair tied back, stethoscope draped with the same elegance as silk. Her rounds were punctuated by soft inquiries, nurses wanting to know what it felt like, colleagues seeking her advice on managing other kinds of gates in their own lives. But there were costs too. One afternoon, she encountered Dr. Malcolm, a department head 2 years her junior. He beckoned her into his office, brow furrowed. "Geneva, there's been chatter. The board wondered if your media profile might be a distraction." She fixed him with a smile, calm as ever. "I assure you my focus remains patient care." He looked unconvinced. "It's just public activism can polarize some donors." "Are reconsidering," she finished for him gently. "Let them, there will be others." Malcolm nodded, discomfort writ large on his face. "You know, when my family immigrated here, my mother was stopped at every checkpoint. She never raised her voice either. But she told me, sometimes you shout by standing very still." Geneva allowed the truth of it to sink in, then nodded. "Then let's stand where it matters." Summer tipped into fall. Policy changes mounted. Not every gate was fixed, not every staff member transformed, but the momentum was undeniable. An old friend called from MIT to say, "Your stories required reading in my critical studies seminar. The students debate not what happened, but how everyone reacted. They want to know, what does it take to be that brave in public?" Geneva laughed, the sound full and unguarded. "Most days, it feels less like courage and more like being too tired to move." The friend pressed, "But if you had moved or stood down, what would you tell students who just want to be safe?" "You're not safe because you're silent," Geneva said. "You're only less seen." The morning of the National Civil Rights Conference, she found herself at a podium again, hundreds of faces turned upward, each waiting for a prescription for change that didn't come from a textbook. She recited lines from her own poem, the one scribbled in the margin of a red-eyed flight beneath the surgeon's schedule, above a calendar grid choked with meetings. "Stand your ground as if the world will not answer. Hold your silence as if it changes everything. Sometimes you're the witness and the weight. Sometimes justice is the seat you don't let go." The applause startled her not for its size but its sincerity. Later, in quiet conversation with young attorneys, she was asked, gently, "What does it cost, really, to hold the line?" She answered truthfully, "Some days it costs all your comfort. Other days it buys everyone's dignity." On the anniversary of the flight, Harmon reached out for a follow-up. "Do you ever regret not letting it go?" she asked, camera lens trained close, the background filled with the hum of a new generation boarding, no one pulled aside. Geneva considered, "I regret all the times I let it go before, not that day." At the close of the interview, Harmon switched off the feed. "Funny thing, the woman in the navy hoodie, she started a group. They call themselves gatekeepers. They meet every month, look for ways to serve as formal witnesses. The last meeting was at the airport, gate 148. Geneva pressed her lips together, the start of a smile pulling at one side. "Every ending is a beginning," she mused. Sometimes, revolutionary acts begin not in shouts or marches, but in waiting, unyielding in the face of presumption and protocol. In refusing the comfort of easy compliance, Geneva Porter seeded a reckoning that outgrew her own story. Through the slow arc of patience and the sudden clarity of exposure, she offered a blueprint for dignity defended, steady, watchful, and above all, public. 2 months later, as she boarded a red-eye across the country, Geneva found herself standing momentarily at a new gate, ticket in hand, face half-shadowed by the brim of her hat. This terminal echoed with the usual sounds, announcements over the PA, intercoms warbling, the click and drag of overnight bags. She watched the younger passengers file in, many still wary, some now emboldened. Standing among them, she caught eyes with a flight attendant, this one older, with a bit of salt in her hair and a steady presence. The attendant gave a knowing nod and a single, quiet welcome. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Porter. No flags, no fuss." And this time, Geneva took her seat, not as an exception fought for, but as a birthright restored. The plane taxied, wheels lifting, the world tilting toward dawn. Outside, the glass of the terminal caught the rising light. Inside, a single seat 2A held more than a passenger. It held the proof that sometimes the system yields to the stillness of a person who simply stays put, and the promise that every such witness leaves the gate a little more open forever after.